Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Success in Africa Leadership Podcast. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership and organizational development. Simply put, I study what makes people successful. I have been studying this for 3 decades with a particular focus on people right here in Africa. And in this podcast, I share stories, lessons, and insights about people having success in Africa. Why have I created this podcast? Because I have a vision for Africa. You see, I have a vision of Africa becoming a high-income continent by the year 2040. And for that to happen, I need you and every African watching or listening to this podcast to become successful. So, if you want to be successful in Africa, I encourage you, like and subscribe to this podcast. This episode is brought to you courtesy of BCA Online, the one-stop shop for mastering leadership. Joining BCA Online is free, and it gives you access to countless hours of knowledge, videos, and a plethora of resources on leadership that will enhance your capacity. If you have questions that you want me to answer after watching this video, just log on to BCA Online. The link is on the screen, and post your questions there. That is where I will respond. Today, I am continuing on a 5-part series that I started about 3 weeks ago on culture. Culture is the sum total of behaviors that are rewarded plus behaviors that are tolerated minus behaviors that are punished. See, across the continent, very capable people, young and old, are engaging in behaviors that conspire to make them poor, often without realizing it. They do so because they've been taught certain behaviors and norms. And in the next few episodes, I am examining, a number of behaviors of African culture, which each on its own, and certainly when taken together, they conspire to shorten our lifespans. Understand that every organization, every tribe, every family has culture. And here we're looking at cultural elements that are common to almost every single tribe in Africa. I've seen them in East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, Central Africa, and Southern Africa. Each of these 5 aspects have some good elements. In fact, many of us cherish them, and we consider them an integral part of who we are as Africans. I share these observations with no intention to cast blame on anybody. However, after researching and reflecting deeply on the forces that shape our destiny as Africans, I've come to the unfortunate conclusion that in large part, these 5 cultural norms are contributing to our premature demise. And if we don't recognize them and deliberately seek to modify or change them, then we will continue to get the same outcomes that we've always gotten. Remember, I'm an African myself. And even I have struggled to let go of some of these 5. And I'm going to challenge you to look closely at Africans who have consistently broken out of poverty. I suspect you'll find that many of them have consciously gone against some of these cultural norms. Over the last 3 weeks, I identified 3 of them. If you haven't watched those episodes, I encourage you to go back and look at them. The first of the 5 that I identified was reverence for seniority. The second one was our proclivity of overspending on weddings and funerals. And the third one was marginalization of women. Today, I'm going to look at the fourth of the 5, And this one is our disrespect for time. Disrespect for time. A few years ago, in the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis, I was having a conversation with a friend about the trials and tribulations we had all endured. I suggested that perhaps we should not just focus only on the negative, but also reflect on perhaps any positive changes that had emerged during the COVID crisis. My friend, who works in the development sector for an international non-governmental organization that provides donor funding to African governments, immediately responded, said, "Hey, I can tell you one, Modupe. We got used to video calls instead of in-person meetings, and we became far more efficient." "What do you mean?" I asked. He explained. He said, "Listen, when meetings with government officials were held in person, those government officials were almost never on time. A meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. might start at 10:15, 10:30, or even later, if it started at all. But with virtual meetings, the people were far more punctual, partly because when somebody was late, the meeting simply proceeded without them." What my friend was describing is a behavior that has become sadly normalized across much of Africa, a disrespect for time. Lateness has become culturally acceptable. In fact, in some cases, it is even viewed as a sign of status. You see, again, I will remind you, culture is behaviors we reward plus behaviors we tolerate minus those we punish. When lateness is tolerated, or worse yet, it is admired, it becomes embedded as part of our culture. See, there's a phrase called "time is money." It is widely known across the world. Yet, despite this awareness of the phrase, it seems like it is not widely practiced or embodied here in Africa. We do not behave as if time truly has economic value. Consider this simple comparison. Take any 10 adults in Africa and 10 adults in a wealthy country such as Germany. In a 24-hour period, all 20 of them, the 10 in Africa, the 10 in Germany, they must eat, they must be clothed, they must find shelter, they must meet some basic needs. But not all 20 are equally productive. In Germany, on average, 8 out of the 10 adults will spend about 8 hours engaged in productive work. That is, creating goods and services that someone else is willing to pay for. However, in many African contexts, that number of the people who are engaged in productive work is closer to 3 instead of 8. The value created by the 3 productive people in Africa must then be shared by the 10. In Germany, the value created by the 8 productive people is shared amongst the 10. This simple difference explains much of this disparity in wealth between African countries and communities and German communities and countries. Now, some of this gap you can attribute to health, education, infrastructure, but part of it can be traced directly to how we treat time. When time is not valued, being idle at 11 a.m. does not feel costly, but it is. It is impoverishing. I mean, walk around many places in Africa at 11 o'clock on a Monday or a Tuesday, and you will see people in the street sitting around, not doing anything. That is impoverishing behavior. In Africa, we joke about GMT and BMT, that's Greenwich Mean Time and Black Man Time. Lateness is normalized. Arriving late is tolerated. In some contexts, in fact, being the last to arrive is interpreted as a sign of importance. What we rarely consider is the cumulative cost. I once facilitated a training session for senior public sector executives. The session was supposed to start at 9 a.m. At 9:05 a.m., only 40% of the participants were present, mostly the junior staff. By 9:25 a.m., about 80% had arrived, including some senior officials. At 9:35, the most senior person arrived, and only then did the session begin. As I waited, I calculated the cost. I estimated the salaries of those present, converted it to an hourly rate, and calculated the cost of the wasted half hour. The figure was staggering. And then I realized that this likely happens every single day. Disrespect for time impoverishes us. Let me explain another area in which lateness costs us billions. It's in lost coordination, or the inability to effectively coordinate. You see, when people cannot be relied upon to show up on time, coordination becomes difficult. Complex operations become harder, if not impossible, to manage. Each person anticipates lateness from the others, creating a cascade of inefficiencies. To compensate, organizations then have to introduce buffers, redundancies, backup plans, all of which add cost. This drives down return on investment and increases the cost of doing business. This is one of the reasons why it's difficult to do large projects in Africa. Because coordinating between people, lots of people who don't have a respect for time and timeliness, makes it very difficult. So what do we end up with? A lot of sole proprietorships, a lot of, as we say in my language, one-man gang, a lot of individual contributors, but no large-scale organizations, companies, projects that are led by, organized by Africans. This is a tragedy, and it is the reality for today. You see, when assignments are just not completed on time and there are no consequences, small delays accumulate. Clearing goods at ports takes days instead of hours. Registering a business takes weeks instead of days. These delays raise costs, and they are ultimately going to be borne by the poorest and most vulnerable. That is why, when adjusted for quality, the goods and services in Africa are often the most expensive. They're more expensive than goods and services in other continents. And to make them affordable, what do? We accept lower quality. Now, some people might say, listening to this episode, well, but Modupe, there are benefits to our relaxed approach to time. After all, we prioritize relationships. We make time for visitors. We value social connection, and that is important. And that may well be true, that relationships in Africa are strong. I don't disagree. However, I will point out that we must be honest about the trade-off. What we give up for this flexibility, it's wealth. We give up wealth. And along with wealth, we give up life expectancy. Because when you don't have money, you won't have money to pay for the medical treatments that you need to increase, to pay for the healthy foods that you need in order to make sure that your body is healthy, to pay for perhaps the tools that you need to exercise so that you stay healthy, to pay for perhaps the engagement and entertainment that you need to mentally stay revitalized. So let's be clear about what we're giving up. You see, this is something that is going to hit home for a lot of us, because many of us have been guilty of it. We tolerate lateness all the time, but it does undermine our ability to create wealth. It undermines our ability to even partner globally. Serious investors are fiercely protective of their time. You want to meet with a serious investor and you are late to the meeting, you've already devalued yourself. If there are things that you need to have delivered and you deliver it late, you've already devalued yourself. Even if they don't say anything, even if they don't scream about it, you are still being quietly discounted, whether it's in how you are paid or how you're treated. In today's world, with watches, phones, calendars, digital reminders, persistent lateness is no longer a matter of circumstance. It is a choice, folks. It's a choice. Consider a simple example, a very local one. 2 seamstresses produce high-quality dresses. Let's assume that, the quality is the same, but one delivers exactly when she promises, and the other requires constant supervision to deliver even a few days late. Who are you going to pay more for the same dress? To the one who delivers on time. Why? If for no other reason than they will stress you less, but also, frankly, the fact that you can then plan according to that. You don't have to have redundancies. So that first seamstress who delivers on time will get more money for the same product than somebody else. Why? Because the quality of service is better and is valued higher. Multiply this behavior across millions of people and billions of transactions, and you start to understand the economic cost to our continent. Every year, Africa is losing billions of dollars because of our cultural tolerance for lateness. These losses translate into fewer hospitals, fewer medicines, poorer nutrition, and shorter lives. My fellow African, if you want to be successful in Africa, if you want to make a great impact in Africa, then treat time as money. Respect it. Honor deadlines. Deliver when you say you will. Make punctuality an integral part of your personal values, and then reward that behavior in your organization and discourage lateness. It may seem like a small thing, but it speaks volumes to those who possess the time, talents, and treasure that you need for them to invest in your organization or idea for it to come to fruition and deliver on its potential. The choice is yours. The future is yours if you will grab it with a time-conscious mentality. Folks, we've come to the end of today's episode. I do hope you've learned something about being successful in Africa. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like the video. Tell your friends about it. Together, we can transform our beloved continent of Africa. I'll see you next week.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.